To the Media Mastery Show. I'm Aldwyn Altuney, your guest for today, and I have a very special guest with me today, the lovely Leo Petrik, who I've known for over 10 years on the Gold Coast. He is the Chief Engagement Officer of MasterClass Networking and Business Marketing Events. Hello and welcome, Leo.
Hi, how are you, Aldwyn? And thank you for inviting me on the show.
Fantastic. I'm really good. Thank you very much. It's great to have you with us. You are known as the networking king around the Gold Coast. I've seen you at so many events over the years, and you've always been fantastic to chat with and have a great laugh with and go out with, and as in not go out with in a relationship, but go out with as in go out to parties and events, and you're always a lot of fun and fantastic guy to communicate with. And of course, that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about the power of effective communication. But before we do that, can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you came to be known as the networking king on the Gold Coast, and what got you interested in networking in the first place?
Well, I don't think we have that much time on the show, so I'll give you a thumbnail sketch. Many years ago, when I started in sales and marketing, I was introduced to a networking group called SWAP. Back then, we're talking over 40 years ago, which is a bit scary. And then it was designed for salespeople. It was called Salesmen with a Purpose. And when I went, I loved it. I actually learnt heaps. They had great speakers. And I thought, this is the beginning of my networking journey. So I think I'll play with this. So I started becoming a regular, I became a member. Then I started finding out about Chambers of Commerce, Rotary. Over the years, I became a Toastmaster, did my DSM. I've just been involved with a lot of different groups because I found the power of groups was key. Unfortunately, as I went through the journey, I also found out that most people didn't know how to communicate. They couldn't communicate their intention. They didn't have any skills actually to learn. Their natural skills seemed to have dissipated over time. And then quite a number of years ago, about the time we met, I got involved with an organization that was very focused in a structured way on business networking. And that became a linchpin for me because I started to realize you can put systems around networking. Now, as you know, because you've known me for a long time, I can be a little bit random. So systems are really not, how can I put it, my forte per se, but I have learnt over the years that systems actually set you free. So I've become a very powerful advocate for really good systems. And I've got people around me now that help me create better systems with what we're doing. And so I've been all about engaging people, helping people connect better, communicate better, and build really amazing relationships, because it's at that level that we all win. We all win in business. We all win personally. We win with our kids. We are able to have great communications with people at all levels. And I think that's something that's often forgotten, particularly since the market's been segmented so much, or the perception of segmentation has occurred in the market.
And particularly, I guess, also as we've gone so online with our communication, it's like people have forgotten how to talk to each other one-on-one. There's a lot of social anxiety going on out there now, and people are even nervous about meeting people. It's almost like a foreign thing to some people that are just, always behind their computers. So, it is, I guess, a skill that needs to be learned for some people. And, with kids now, I heard a stat that 80% of kids up to the age of 5 are on an iPad or some kind of smartphone, or, that's huge compared to when we were growing up. So, how do people sort of assimilate and, get to learn these skills?
That's a very interesting question because it's got 3 parts to it. And if you allow me to play with this, I'll
Sure.
sort of touch on it. Technology is a great tool. I mean, look at us. We're doing this over the internet. We're using Google Hangouts, and it's great. But technology is a tool. What's happened, though, the way it's been promoted, the way it's been pushed down the throats of parents and kids, we've become the tool to the technology. And that's pretty scary when you think about it. It's almost like hundreds of millions of people wake up every morning, and if they do turn on their phone, if they haven't turned it off at night, the first thing they do is check their Facebook. The last thing they do when they go to bed is check their Facebook. That's pretty frightening. And you're right, kids are getting technology far too young. What I try to do, particularly in what some people could class as Gen X, Gen Y, and the baby boomers, is to get you back to what you were like as a child. So in fact, I don't teach people how to network. What I do is help you unlearn the things that are prohibiting you from networking effectively. Because when you were a 5-year-old, you were the best networker on the planet. You had no trouble engaging with other kids. You could communicate, you'd play. If there was a problem, it was dealt with straight away. There was no issue. And there was no hang-ups. There was no guilt or remorse. It was just, okay, we're playing again. And it was done. And we've kind of forgotten that in our journey through life. We've forgotten it through the school system, which kind of tells us to sit down and shut up. We lose it with our parents because our parents start to use technology. And I'm of an age where TV became the babysitter, particularly just in my pubescence, because I had a TV since I was about, I think, 2, but I never got to see it all the time. Homework was always a priority. But when I was growing up, I'd come home, I'd be out playing with the kids. Today, now, people are walking around with their iPhones and their iPads, and they're not even looking at the world around them. I think we connect poorly with people, and by connect means we bump into them. And we bump into them by accident because they're doing exactly the same thing as we're doing, and that's looking at our iPad and not looking what's around us. And we're constantly bumping into people saying we're sorry, but we don't even look at them when we say we're sorry. We just keep going and we're doing this. Sorry, sorry. And really, that's not a way to create relationships. What I suggest to people is put the thing away, turn it off, put it in your purse or pocket, and actually walk down the street and smile at people. And you will be actually astounded how you start to integrate and how you will feel as a consequence, particularly when people start smiling back. And that, to me, is absolutely a first level form of communication.
Yes, very good point. It's amazing how often you see that. And I must say, I'm a little bit addicted to my smartphone too. And it's, it is really challenging actually to just put the phone away and just be present with someone. It just seems like there's the call of the phone all the time, and, once upon a time with no mobile phones, my goodness, what did we do then? We had landline phones to contact people through, and now people can get us in the bathroom and in the bedroom, and they'll find us in all sorts of places by ringing our mobile. And then there's the constant emails, there's the social media, all the constant interaction going on online, and it is very inviting, I guess, and almost addictive. So to just put it aside, that's quite a challenge.
It is, but you said something interesting. There's constantly activity happening online. People are emailing you, they're texting you, there's things happening on social media. It doesn't matter whether it's LinkedIn, Google+, Facebook, it doesn't matter. But the one thing that we forget is that it's only an imposition if we allow it to be. And that's an important one. If we allow it to be. I never take my phone into the toilet. And I will admit, some people might be listening, say, hang on, I've spoken to you, and you may have. I don't do it anymore. I got taken to task by my younger son, actually, some little while ago, because when we'd have a coffee get-together and we'd catch up, every now and then I'd pick up the phone and I'd either text or do something or read a text or whatever. And he actually took me to task. He said, Dad, when I'm with you, I want to be with you, not you and your phone. And that really hit home. I truly value the relationship that I have with my boys. So now I've started to create very simple games. Now, when I see my son, phone gets turned off. I don't care who's going to be there. The world will still turn. If somebody's dead, I'm sorry, I can't do anything about that from where I'm sitting anyway. So worst case scenarios, there's nothing on the planet that can cause me any kind of grief. And if the aliens are coming, they're coming anyway. So whether I find out about that in half an hour or straight away is irrelevant. So I've started to learn to become very, very present in my conversations. And it's a lesson I learned actually from Richard Branson. He's an amazing man on so many levels. But when you get to meet him personally, when you actually sit and talk to him, it is almost disquieting at first when he just leans in and he's just so totally present into the conversation, and he's hearing you. He's listening to the words and he's hearing you. And when you talk with him, you have an amazing communication. And when you do the same thing to him, it's amazing. It's fabulous how much more you actually garner, you learn from a person when you're actually present, because you're no longer getting sound bites. And I think that's probably my big thing, because today with technology, everything's in sound bites. But real life isn't. And real life, when you're present with somebody, can't be done in sound bites. You can't do it in 140 characters and press send and then wait. You've got somebody who's sitting with you, or when you're in a room, or even in this interaction, you're waiting to hear what I'm saying. You're waiting to see my expression, and I'm waiting to hear your questions or responses. And hopefully the information is of value to your listeners. But the interesting thing about being present is creating some games. So with my sons, anytime we're there, I put the phone away. Now, when I go to dinner or to a coffee, I will ask them, put your phone there on silent and take it off vibrate. But I've got a deal for you. The first person that picks up the phone pays the bill.
I love it.
And it's great when you're doing dinner with 4 or 5 or 6 people, because you have all the phones stacked in the middle of the table, and the first person that actually grabs their phone pays for everybody. Man, I tell you what, that's an interesting incentive. And then people start to get present. But there's another thing too, and this is probably going back to some stuff that I was sharing with people many years ago, is that we've also gotten too used to what I call auto speak. Now, you know the thing I'm talking about, and I'll give you an example. You meet somebody, and somebody you haven't seen for a while, so I'll use you as an example, and it'll be, "Hi, Aldwyn, how are you?" Your normal response will be, "Hi, Leo, how are you?" I said, "How's it going?" So, "You're pretty good. How's life going? How's work going? How's business going? How are the kids, the family, blah, blah, blah. Hey, we haven't caught up for a while. We should catch up for a coffee." Yeah, I'll give you a buzz, or I'll text you up. And that's the end of the communication. But the thing is, nothing was said. There was no connection. It was all auto speak from both parts, from both people. Now, what I'm going to suggest now is actually quite powerful, but only do it when you are prepared to be responsible for what happens next. Now, when you ask somebody, "How are you?" and they'll go, "Blah, blah, 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 blah." Stop, pause, look at them in the eye, reach over, touch them on the hand or the forearm or the shoulder, depending on how close they are to you, and ask them again, seriously, "How are you?" And then watch them. Now, the interesting thing is, if you watch their eyes, you'll see something rather remarkable happen. And I've done my own personal research on this, and I can tell you in probably 90% of cases this happens. You'll start seeing their eyeballs flutter. And what that is their brain actually disengaging from auto and switching into manual. And then all of a sudden, the next words out of their mouth will be something like, "Well, to tell you the truth, blah," and it will come out. And then you will be part of a conversation. But you started it, so you have to be responsible to sit there and engage and be present. So I say this with all caution. Great thing to do, but be prepared to have a conversation with that person when you do that. Don't do it and expect to disappear in 2 minutes, because it's not going to happen.
Yes.
And that's a pretty powerful.
Or take on a counsellor role.
Or take on you take on the role of counsellor then to some degree. But like anything, you can listen and empathise. You don't have to sympathise and get into it. Being a friend is just being there, not necessarily solving all their problems.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. I think that's fantastic. How are you really? So you get that authentic communication going right there. So, and it's showing you really care about someone. It's interesting you say that auto mode that people get, "Oh, what do you do?" And they state what they do for a living.
Yes.
Instead of stating how they help people. Now, what do you say when people say, "What do you do?" And in fact, calling yourself Chief Engagement Officer is a very interesting take on CEO. So what do you say to people when they ask, "What do you do, Leo?"
Well, firstly, I don't tell them I'm a Chief Engagement Officer. Often people say, "What's the Chief Engagement Officer?" I say, well, that's just a different perception, my perception on my actual role as a CEO. Now, a lot of people say they'll look at CEO and they go, "Oh, you're the Chief Executive Officer." Well, I don't have people that work for me, but I have lots of people that work with me. Again, it's a mindset. So I engage with them. I'm not an executive giving them orders. Now, some of those people lead teams because they're exceptional leaders. I don't consider myself to be an exceptional leader. I am a leader per se, and I'm a fair manager. But there is a huge distinction too between good leaders and good managers, and they're not always in the same person, because it's a very rare person that can be both, and it's understanding the skills. But usually when I say to people, I'll just say, hey, did you have a good day today? Or if they ask me what I do, I'll look them in the eye and say, well, I can do one of three things. I'm a man. So that's one thing I do all the time. Can't get out of that one.
So that makes people laugh, of course, straight away.
Because it usually gets a laugh. Usually people ask me, where do I come from? And I tell them my mother, because that's actually the literal truth. If they ask, well, that's a communication quirk, isn't it? That's going back to the whole communication thing. If somebody asks better questions, you get better answers. Now, if somebody asks me, where was I raised, or where did I grow up, or where did I go to school, I can give them the answer that they're really looking for. But when they ask me, where am I from? Well, I'm from my mother, and that's the reality. And they always look at me really weird when I give them that answer. And then they get it. And then they go, oh, you're a smartass. I go, yeah, sure. But ask me a better question and you'll get a better answer. So that's part of the deal. But, usually I just tell people, look, I help them communicate better. I help people connect, communicate, and build fabulous relationships. That's what I tell them. I don't have a title as in, educator, mentor, whatever. Do I do those things? Of course. I am a business consultant. I'm a writer. I'm a speaker. I can do all of those things. And apparently, I've been told I do all of those things quite well. But the interesting thing is that what I am more than anything else is somebody who communicates or attempts to communicate well. And I'll be the first person to say, I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect at it. I make plenty of mistakes at it. But I'm aware of those mistakes and I learn from those mistakes. So next time I engage with somebody, I've had a learning, an epiphany for myself, so I do it better step by step. But what I do with MasterClass Networking when people come on board is I help them unlearn the things that they do. And my promise is that by the end of the course, they will be probably better networkers and better communicators than I am. And that's my gift to them, because they're going to have their personality. They're going to find their gift in the process of learning how to do this well and how to unlearn a lot of things that are holding them back. And then they will be absolutely spectacular. So.
Yeah, very good. Now, you mentioned the word mistakes there. I attempt to, and I don't like the word try. I was about to say try. I noticed I was about to say it. The word mistakes. I like to kind of change that around and say, all adversity leads to opportunity, or all challenges, look at it maybe as a challenge, or, because the thing is, life is just one big journey and we're constantly learning all the time, aren't we? And it's sometimes so easy to beat up on yourself and be hard on yourself sometimes when you do something, you think, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that, and people should all over themselves, as Kurik actually once said.
As they say. Well, all right. Well, here's a quick take on this. I was part of that era where we went away from using words like making a mistake, failing, and things like that. We started put frames around it, like, as you mentioned, we robustly change how we're doing, or there's been a shift in the process and we want to do things a little bit better. But all of a sudden we stop making mistakes. You know what happened when that shift happened? We stopped being accountable.
What happened?
We stop being accountable. We stop being accountable to ourselves, and we stop being accountable to other people. Words exist for a purpose. Now, a mistake is a mistake. Accidents happen. Things don't happen on purpose unless somebody has engineered it. But if you're driving down the street and something happens, you can class it as an accident. Now, I have an alternate theory on that too. Yes, you can class it as an accident because to all intents and purposes, it's an accident. But is it truly an accident? Because if the consequence of that, if that consequence was affected by somebody who took drugs or took alcohol or was too tired or was driving a defective vehicle, then it wasn't an accident. So when we start using things, that's an accident waiting to happen. Well, no, it wasn't. It was a result as a consequence of somebody's choices. So effectively, there's no such thing as an accident. But those choices can be mistakes, and then you have to own up to them, and you have to own up to those mistakes, but don't beat yourself up over it. Because so many people, particularly in our language that we have, we talk about failure as this all blossoming thing, when in fact failure is a circumstance, it's not a purpose. See, I don't personally fail, I try things. Now, they don't work out, and sometimes it's as a consequence to a mistake, but I learn from it, so I do it again, and I learn and move forward. Now, here's an interesting one. Recently in a conversation, I had somebody, this is quite personal, so this is going to be really an interesting one. Somebody said to me, they said, Leo, there are a couple of people I know that are losing faith in you. They don't kind of trust what you're saying or what you're doing. And I said, oh, okay. Why is that? I said, well, it's because you've got these businesses that you're playing with, and you're doing this and you're doing that, and you haven't launched. And it's almost like you're going to do this, you're promising that, and all of this. And I started to think about it, and I thought, I'll give you a quick answer to that. And he goes, sure, for sure. I said, look, I feel sorry for them. And he went, I beg your pardon? I said, I feel truly, truly sorry for them, because I'm attempting things. I'm going out there, and my circumstances fail at different stages for different reasons, and I'm learning from them. And next time I put it out there, it's better. And if it happens, that circumstance fails again, the next one will be better. Guess what? My 3-year project on a particular project that I'm soft launching in Melbourne very shortly will be successful this time. And I know exactly why, because for the life of me, I can't find anything that could go wrong. Now, that's interesting when you think about it. Circumstances came up that I had not considered, and things didn't work. But where I feel sorry for them is they're sitting there bleeding and complaining and whinging about the world. They're not doing anything new. They're not attempting anything. They're not trying anything, and the world is effectively passing them by. And I thought about it, and I thought, yeah, that's actually the biggest problem with these people. And these people I use very loosely, because I'm not saying that about everybody. But always when somebody says something that could be negative towards you, think about the real consequence here. Now, I could have taken huge offense at that. I could have said, oh my God, I'm failing my friends, I'm doing this, but I'm not doing what I'm doing for them. And I'm happy to put a concept in front of anybody to get their feedback, because that's part of the purpose. If that feedback's good, fantastic. I've got something to build on. If it's bad, fantastic, because guess what? I can learn from that, and then I've got something to build on. See, I have a very, very simple philosophy, is that there are not just winners and losers. That's too black and white. There are winners, there are learners. But if you don't learn, then the tipping point into loser starts to happen, and you make that choice. Nobody else makes that choice. So to me, the world is full of winners and learners, and the very small minority, depending on where you're living, could be losers, but that's their choice. It's not the circumstances, because everything, whether it's communication, language, whatever, it's all about choice.
Yes, absolutely. And taking action, even when you don't know what the result's going to be. Like, you think of all the successful people in the world, they've all taken massive action, and generally anyone who's made lots of money has lost lots of money at some point, because they've taken more action, and they've risked things. They've taken high risk chance investment. I can count myself in that. I've thrown literally thousands of dollars away at things that I thought were going to bring back great returns and didn't. However, it hasn't stopped me. I've just kept on going. I've invested in other things. So that's the big trick too, is, whatever anyone else says, it's their opinion at the end of the day, isn't it? And everyone's entitled to their opinion, and it's up to you how much of that you're going to take on board or take personally, or so that's a really good point. You have taken massive action, and you've done so many different things, and you've had lots of traction in lots of different things you've done. So obviously the people that are making that kind of judgment, clearly they don't really know what you're up to. They're just seeing maybe a part of the story.
They don't ask questions. In fact, the attitude to me, and this is probably a good attitude, well, it's a good attitude for me because that's what works, but I remember many, many years ago when I was married, and we were starting a new venture, and I had this really great idea. So I invested $32,000. Now, $32,000 about 20 years ago was a fair chunk of money. You know, you could put it easily be a strong deposit on a house.
Yes.
Now, I lost it. The exercise that I went on didn't work out. And my ex-wife came to me. She was also doing the bookkeeping for the business and everything else. She said, "You have just wasted and killed and, you know, ripped out $32,000 out of our savings and everything else." And I said, "Well, actually, I didn't." And she looked at me and she sort of said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I invested $32,000 and I learnt a lot from that journey. Because from that journey, it stopped me, because I stopped it at $32,000. It stopped me from making a $320,000 mistake." Now, I kind of figured $32,000 is a very small price to pay for good education than $320,000 and still not learning, which also happens to a lot of people too.
Absolutely. There's a gift in everything, isn't there? And particularly the things you've done maybe that have been the hardest to accept. That's where the biggest learnings often come, is with, as they say, with every breakdown, there's always a breakthrough around the corner. Just hang in there for the breakthrough, right? So if you're feeling down right now watching this, just understand that there will be a breakthrough around the corner. Just hang in there.
That's it. And just keep moving forward. Keep doing it.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. And keep on path. I guess, having a clear vision is really important. So being clear on what you want to do, what you're passionate about. Like, I love interviewing people. I love doing these shows. I love connecting with people and finding out more about people. And, everyone has a library within them, they say, when they die, and how many people actually share their knowledge and really make the most of their life. And I think, getting really clear on why you're here and what you want to do and what your purpose and passion is, I think that's really essential. What are your thoughts on that, Leo?
It's interesting that you say that, because I think every one of us, no matter who we are, has an amazing story. And when you were just saying that, it just reminded me of something very, very powerful, because many people live in what I call a rut. This is an analogy somebody used many, many years ago, and I've always held on to it because it's such a good one. And the difference between a rut and a hole is that a rut is a hole that's open to both ends. That's it. But the thing is that for most people, they literally keep digging their rut that they're living in, and eventually they die and they just tip the dirt over and that's it. They're gone. Nobody knows their story. Nobody knows their journey. They don't know the lessons that other people could have learnt from them, because that's also very, very key. But the reason that doesn't happen, and look, social media has a lot to answer for on one side, but it's our acceptance of social media that's really the problem, and what we believe it should be doing or could be doing, when in fact it doesn't do any of those things. It doesn't connect us better. It gives us lots of connections, but as I saw on a Facebook cartoon, in fact, I saw a girl with her grandfather saying, "Oh, granddad, I've got 127 Facebook friends." And granddad just looked down, patted her on the shoulder and said, "Darling, in my day, we used to call those imaginary friends."
Or invisible friends.
Or invisible, whatever. So think about that. Wow. We can be hugely connected, but we're not. We're not connected till we can do this, till we do something on Skype. But to me, a real connection happens face to face. I can find out more about somebody and they can find out more about me in 15 minutes than 2 years of Facebook texting, communication and everything else like that, because we will be in each other's energy. But there's something critical that comes with that too. When you're face to face, you will do something that you don't normally do otherwise, and that's ask. Now, one of my greatest mentors is Jack Canfield, and he and his partner wrote a number of books, Chicken Soup for the Soul, but they also wrote an amazing series of CDs called The Aladdin Factor. Now, The Aladdin Factor was all about the power of asking. To ask for everything, not just asking for the universe, but asking for an opportunity, asking for something, asking for a loaf of bread, asking for a meal, asking for a bed, asking for some change, asking for help. You have no idea how many people in such a poor state today because they simply don't know how to ask for help. And help could be done in the simplest ways for many people. And they don't have to cost a lot. They don't have to be anything. And when you do help somebody who asks, the feeling of gratitude and joy that you receive from that is indescribable. That to me is ultimately the most powerful thing. But it's also asking good questions. It goes back to what we were talking about before with the auto speak. We'll ask basic connected questions. And another powerful one that everyone will know is walk into a retail shop. And what's the first question the retail person will ask you? The first question they will ask you is, can I help you? And your automatic reaction, almost to 100%, is, no, I'm fine. I'm just looking.
Yes.
And everyone relates to that.
Yes.
Now, when I first started in retail, I had a great guy who taught me. I used to work for Fletcher Jones selling pants and suits. And I used to watch him because I was new to this. I was a young whippersnapper and I was still at school. And I watched him. And when he said something very different. A customer came in and said, he asked, can I help you? And they said, oh no. Instead of sort of saying, what the exercise was going through of saying, look, can I help you and blah, blah, blah. What he said was, welcome. Come and enjoy what we have to offer. Suits are over there, ties are over there, pants are out the back. We've got great staff. And if you have a question, feel free to ask.
Beautiful.
And as soon as he said that, they literally went, well, I've actually come in to have a look at a tie, or I've come in to look at, and immediately you'd get the response and you'd get them going to where you want. They needed to go, and they weren't confronted. They were actually welcomed. They were drawn in. And that's the way we need to do that with asking better questions. Now, women have got it all over guys on this. I mean, seriously. You go to any kind of function. You go to a party, you go to a bar, you go to a networking or business meeting or something like that. All the women are nicely dressed. They've got their hair done. They've got nice couture bags and shoes and jewelry and all that. It's easy for another woman to come up to another woman and say, oh, my God, I love what you've done to your hair. Can you tell me, did you do that yourself, or who's the hairdresser? Immediate rapport, because you're talking about something you both are in tune with. Or you can talk about your blouse, or you can talk about your makeup, or you can talk about the handbag or your shoes. Guys are a little bit difficult at that. I mean, seriously, if I did that, I'd have to do it in the campus way, because otherwise everyone would be looking at me really funny if I just walked up to them and girl said, hi, darling, I reckon that Dior bag of yours is absolutely stunning. Can you tell me where I might be able to get one? Now, all the guys are going to go, I'm not sure. Now, if I did this, excuse me, sweetie, that bag's just so luscious. Could you please tell me where you got it? I'd get a different conversation. But it is so much harder for guys. It is so much harder for guys to make that connection. So we need to just simply say things. And the simplest way to introduce yourself to somebody is to say, hi, my name's Leo. Yours? And that starts a conversation. And it's always just getting that first 3-second tipping point, and then it's easy to keep the conversation going. But what keeps a conversation going is actually learning to ask better questions, not the, hi, how are you? What you doing? Haven't seen you for a while. How are the kids? Seriously. I mean, everyone's so over those, but we use them all the time because it's all ingrained as part of an automatic mechanism. It allows us, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's bad, because in many circumstances, we need that auto speak just to get through segments of the day. But when you really want to have a conversation with somebody, you talk about things that could be of interest. I mean, the Gold Coast weather at the moment is so changeable. I mean, right now I'm looking at, I think we're getting a peak of sun. Now, we had a great weekend. Yesterday it was quite sunny. Today, totally overcast. And it's sort of seesawing everywhere. So we can say, hey, how is this weather affecting your business? How's it affecting retail sales? A lot of people say, I lead with, the football. You know something? I'm amazed how many people, and particularly women, don't follow football. Mind you, there's equally amazed at how many do, but it's not a safe question. Because you might say, well, I don't follow football. And then what do? You backpedal and say, well, no, neither do I. Let's talk about something. Let's talk about something else. So you've got to be a little bit careful about that. And you want to stay away from asking them what they do. The biggest challenge with most people is that they will tell you their occupation. Now, this is, and we spoke about this the other day, actually. I do not believe that there are business people out there. There aren't any. And I did this exercise many years ago when I was doing a workshop. I asked the room, and there were 50 people in the room, and I've done this with smaller groups as well. I said, what do you do for a living? What do you do for a living? What do you do for a living? And every one of them, to a man and woman, gave me their occupation. And I just said to them, I said, every one of you has given me a great answer, but you are all 100% incorrect. And they went, what? I said, you're not a plumber, a dentist, an electrician, or whatever, a lawyer or a bookkeeper or a TV presenter. What you are is a person in business. Your activity in that business just happens to be these things. They're your goods and your services that you provide to the greater world, but that's not who you are. And my question was, what do? You, not what is your occupation. If I asked the question, what is your occupation, then I would have got the answers. They would have got the answers perfectly. My question was, what do you do for a living? And for most people, they will say they should say they're in business. But we've also gotten in with language quite confused, because I think what's happened out there is we take too many shortcuts, and we call everybody that's in business a business person, or they're a retailer, or they're, whatever. The reality is they're none of those. In fact, that's part of the disconnect that we have. Our language, even prior to the internet, we started to create disconnects in how we talk to people, because we start identifying with what we frame to be somebody as an accountant. Like if somebody says to you and you ask them, what do you do for a living? And they say, I'm an accountant. I can tell you in about 60% of cases, shutters go down, eyes go blurry, and you can start seeing the body language looking, okay, I need to shift and find somebody else to talk to, because you're boring, you're an accountant, because this is what you do. Now, that person could have, male or female, could have the most amazing personality. They could have the most amazing story, and they could educate you on so many other things that could be of benefit to you, not just personally, but in your business as well. But you never get to that point because you've created this, oh, you're an accountant frame, and over here in your little box in here, you've got, oh, let's see, accountant. Oh, yeah, boring, dull, not intuitive. No, thank you. No, don't want to talk to that person. And that's not fair. So I generally don't ask that question, but I look at things differently. I look at people in business, because it's all about people. So as soon as we start shifting the frame from business people to people in business, the energy shifts. Even when people say it, they go, I get that. That's really cool. And we can go one step further, because I believe that marketing and advertising and things like that, we've been sold an interesting bill of goods. I don't think it's been intentional to create the confusion, but for them it was intentional to create segmentation and market to justify their existence in an ever-changing world of marketing and advertising. And one of those things is how we perceive what we do. So many years ago, I can't even remember, I couldn't tell you, when we started using the acronym or the term B2B, or business to business, or business to customer. And that used to always frustrate me, because I totally disagree with that. And people look at me and they go, how can you? If your business is doing business with that business, it's business to business. I go, no. Who's in that business that makes that business work? Oh, the people. Right. Okay. What are the things over here in this business to make that business work? The people. Oh, so it's not business to business, it's person to person. So everything now is person to person. Yeah. Same thing with business to customer, or customer to business. It's still person to person. And we've forgotten that. And that's also been part of the huge disconnect in good quality conversations that we have. When you're looking at somebody often, at a networking function or something, they'll say, oh, I'm a cocktail waitress, or I'm a bricklayer, or I'm a lawyer, or whatever. The thing is that we then go back to our framework for that thing, and it's not necessarily good. Our experience for that sort of thing could be very different. So, I might have been beaten up by a bricklayer's son when I was at school. So as soon as somebody says they're a bricklayer, my whole life experience shifts, and my attitude to that person's just gone, and it's no longer positive. And we all have those sorts of experiences. Now, we might not necessarily, it's a bricklayer as such, but if somebody says bricklayer, we've got a little memory spot back here that all of a sudden something will percolate and go, bricklayer, not good people, or stay away from them, or whatever. And then all of a sudden we have this barrier being created unnecessarily and largely because we don't even know it's happening, because people are constantly focusing on their occupation, not the fact that they are actually a human being. And that we are people, and everything we do is about asking good questions, asking better questions, and starting to have a communication that works. It's the same thing with the generations, because generational stuff has been around now since probably about 30 or 40 years. I mean, probably, close to 40, when all of a sudden we started talking about Gen Xers, the people who are no longer baby boomers. And then we thought, okay, we've got another 10-year period, so the next lot of people that are coming up out of that will be Gen Y. And then I'm not even sure whether we got to Gen Z, but I think we got to millennials. And then we have all this stuff. And then the marketing gurus keep saying, well, this is how you do this to a millennial. This is how you interact with a Gen X or a Gen Y. And to me, that's a crock of dog poop too. Because the reality is that it's not about generations. It's about communication. Again, I was at a marketing meeting 3 weeks ago, and we were actually talking about generational things and how to connect with millennials. And I was listening to the conversation, and I was learning heaps. But then the penny dropped, and I started, because some of these things happen later in life than sooner, because I'd not quite realised this myself, and I'll own that. But now I advocate a different approach to how we're doing this. Now, there were some 20-somethings in the room, and even a 25-year-old was saying, I have trouble talking to a 22-year-old. I'm going, really? You're the same generation. What's the problem? And then I started to realize it had nothing to do with generations. It had to do with education. And this is basically what I said at the meeting. I said, look, and I was talking to a young girl who's 22 years old, lovely lady, and I said, what do you feel about me when I talk? And she said, I like the way you talk because you don't talk down to me and blah, blah, blah. And I understand what you're saying. I said, fantastic. I said, great. Now, you want to know something? I bet that if I started talking about things that are happening in my life and my perception of your generation, because she would have been classed as a millennial, then really what's happening now is that a barrier is created because you're not understanding my speak and I'm not understanding yours. She goes, yeah, that's true. And it happens all the time. I have trouble talking to older business people, and I really now struggling to talk to teenagers and things because it's very different. I said, okay, let's put a time out on that and let's get some understanding here. When I was your age, a little bit younger, right, my life revolved around rock and roll, the hippie era, freedom, motorbikes, and girls. Not necessarily in that order, because there was social stuff and there was personal stuff in there too. So the language I spoke, my parents didn't understand, the establishment didn't understand, business people didn't understand, and younger people didn't understand because they weren't in it. So what's the difference? What's the difference between me at 20 or 22 and you at 22 today? And the difference is nothing. I know exactly where she is and that generation is because I lived it. My circumstances and my experiences within that band of learning were very different, but that's irrelevant because for her children in 30 years' time, it's going to be very different again. We're going to have different technology. We're going to have different interaction. We're going to have different inventions that have happened. But the thing is that we were rebellious. We didn't understand our parents. We were into rock and roll music. We were into the hippie era and freedom, and we got into dope and all that sort of stuff. And people go, yeah, but what's the difference? The kids today are doing the same thing. They're just acting out differently. They're acting out in a society that has a different frame around it, but the behavior is 100% the same. And then when you talk to 30-somethings, their language is different. So to me, it's less a generational problem than it is a communication problem. And I said to the group, I said to the older group, the baby boomers, and I said, look, if you want to create a legacy business, you need to understand your Gen X, Gen Y, and millennials, and I'll use those brands because that's what people understand. They're your future. They're the ones that are going to ensure the success of your business when you're long gone. so long as you create it correctly, if that's what you want to create. If you don't care, it doesn't matter. But if you do care, you want to, stamp your name on the world and leave a legacy, then it's important to be able to connect with these people. But if you do it the way the marketers do it, you'll never do it. What you need to do is go hang out where they hang out. Ask them questions. And even say things like, what words that I use create a negative impact with you? Like, if I sat down and started talking finance with a 20-something, they'd all laugh at me. They think I'm an old fart and, go away, we don't get you. But if I started talking to them about money and saving and creation of wealth using their language, guess what? A conversation occurs. But always be careful to ask and be mindful to ask, if I'm saying anything that you're not understanding or you're getting a negative reaction from, tell me, because there are other words I can use that are more relative to you. I don't want to use my language when I'm talking to you. I want to learn your language. And it's the same thing the other way. So if I want to, and I say to the young ones, if you need to deal with older business people, your parents and everything else, instead of putting them down and saying they're old and stupid and everything else, ask a better question. Take a deep breath and actually spend some time to learn their language. My mother is 86 this year, and I have the most amazing relationship with her and have had for the last 2 decades. And my brother and sister don't get it. Now they'll probably never see this video, but if you do, you guys just don't get it, but you will one day, hopefully. And the thing is, it was just because I chose to have better communication with my mother. I get her and she gets me. She doesn't understand me because, she doesn't understand how I create wealth and how I interact with the world, because she has her world. But she gets me because when I'm with her, we're just chatting and we're doing all the things, and it's great and I love it. And I think that's important, and understanding that it doesn't matter how old a person you're with, honor who they are. And it goes back to exactly what you were saying earlier about the fact that too many people have their song inside them, but it's because people don't ask a question. And then, now this is a tricky one too, and this one can create quite a bit of conflict with people. The biggest problem I find today in business and personally is people have a tendency to ask a question and they only listen enough to make a judgment and then wait for the next opportunity for them to interject with either their opinion or ask another question without actually hearing what the other person has to say and learning from it. To me, one of the most powerful elements is, and it's an old sales trick we used to have, and we used to say this about closing questions, if you're going to ask a question, shut up. Because at that point, you will actually learn something from the other person. And don't go in there with your head spinning, no, I don't agree, or no, I know how to rebut that statement. It's not a competition. It's not about ego. It's not about competition. It is about one thing and one thing only, and that's truly connecting with the person you're with. And that to me is singularly the most powerful gift we can give anybody. So if you go out at any time and you start talking to people, ask better questions, listen to what they say. And I can guarantee you the best gift you will give them is actually listening to them and honoring the gift of what they've shared with you.
Yeah, I love that. There's some great words of wisdom there. And it reminds me of a saying I heard by an American guy called Richard Flint. And he said once, slow down to speed up. And, you mentioned people to people communication as opposed to business, because it's people behind the business. And if you think of the word business, it's got busyness in it. And I think this is part of the problem out there in communication is people are running around like crazy. They're in complete overwhelm, a lot of them, high stress, high anxiety, dealing with the multiple information messages that are coming to them, whether it's online or any other way. Information is moving at such a ridiculously fast pace now, and people are moving so fast that they don't slow down enough to not only listen to themselves to get clear on what their true passion is by slowing down enough to actually get clear on what they really want to do, what they love to do, what makes them sing, but also what makes others sing, and to connect with people on that level, and connect with like-minded people, so you can really, you know, grow and prosper and flourish together. So, you know, what are some tips you give people, you know, in the busyness of today and busyness of business to, you know, to slow down? What are some things you do, maybe, Leo, you could share?
Well, going that on that slow down thing, I've been saying this for years. If you want to accelerate anything in your life, you need to slow down. So I paraphrased Mr. Flint. So I didn't even realize that I had, but that to me is such a powerful phrase, such a powerful thing that people need to understand, because people seem that they've got to get faster and faster and faster because they can't keep up. Well, the best way to keep up is just discard all the things that are no longer relevant. And it comes back to what we said half an hour ago. It still comes down to choice. Your choice, no one else's. I get, on average, at now, because I've been judiciously sorting out a few things, I used to get somewhere like 1,500 emails a day. I now get closer to 300 emails a day. The majority of those I don't even read. They just get deleted. And I don't spend a lot of time doing it because I've now created filters so they're just gone. So I don't see them, but I still get them. So it mucks up my bandwidth a little bit, but I'm learning to try and get over that. It's a personal thing. I hate my bandwidth being wasted on stuff. But the interesting thing, I suppose, I say to people is honor yourself first. It's your choice to do anything and everything in your life. If you don't honor yourself first, the challenge is you will create the circumstance of failure in your life on a rolling basis. You'll never fail because you will just simply live the life that you've chosen to live. What you think of that is whatever you choose to think of that. If anyone judges you for that, that's their problem, not yours, because they don't have a right to judge. Because quite frankly, if anyone is judgmental, tell them to look in a mirror and find out how perfect their life is first. And I'm sure they'll find out that it's not. So they have no right to judge at all. In fact, what people should be doing is getting together and communicating and sharing their experiences so they could all get better. Because I can't live 7.16 billion experiences around the world as well as my own, but I can share points of that to make my life better. So don't try to live somebody else's life. Live your life. Find your song. Find your own song in here. Stop singing somebody else's words and somebody else's thoughts and somebody else's passion, because 99% of the time it's not going to be aligned with yours anyway. Find your own. Then be judicious in the choices you make. You know, be judicious in your personal choices. Be judicious in even from doing this. I've been trapped at times when I'm working on a website or a video that, in fact, I was saying this to somebody on the weekend, that I was actually horrified probably about 3 weeks ago. I rolled out of bed, I had a quick shower, had a bite to eat, then I got started on a project. And that was at 7 o'clock in the morning. I didn't leave that chair, didn't need to go to the toilet, didn't get anything to eat. I had some water with me, and that was all the liquid that I had for the day. I didn't get out of that chair till 1 o'clock the following morning.
Wow.
And when I realized what I'd done, I was horrified. And I realized it when I tried to get up, because literally I'd been locked into position. You know, I was comfortable, everything was fine, I'm just doing my work, I'm just zoning through the screens and doing everything I was doing, which is great. But I had no idea that choice, that decision, how negatively that impacted on me. It took me 3 days to get over it.
Wow. Wow. What were you doing?
Well, I was working on a couple of video things and also some promotional stuff for this project that I'm launching in Melbourne. And it was actually quite funny, because it wasn't until I actually unpacked myself and I started to realize that I was dehydrated, which means that probably the last 10 hours of what I was doing was nowhere near as effective as it could have been. And progressively, the longer you stay in the one spot, the higher you degrade your efficiency and your effectiveness in what you're doing. So now you're struggling through it. It's like you're moving through pudding trying to get to the result, but in your head you're going, oh, just this one more thing, then I'll go to bed. This one more thing, then I'll go to bed. So you're making poor choices. So one of the best choices is every hour, see this thing? Yeah, I know. It's off.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
But see that thing? It's got a clock in it. With it got countdowns and alarms. And I love technology for what the tools they give you. But I
Yes.
like to use it as a tool, not be the tool behind it.
Yes.
It's one of my bugbears. It really is one of my bugbears. So I say to people, do not get me started on technology, because I'll give you 100 answers on how to use it properly and start getting some freedom in your life. But then you set a timer for that for every hour. Then you take 20 minutes, you go get a glass of water, go make a cup of tea. If it's that time of day, have a snack, right? So you're grazing rather than sitting down to a meal, because that takes more time. Go for a walk. Now, I live on a small island here called Emerald Lakes and Emerald Island here on the Gold Coast. And I do one lap of the small island that I live on, which takes me 15 minutes. And that's what I do.
Nice.
And then I come back and I'll work for another hour. Alarm goes off. And I still have water with me, but guess what? When you're working, you forget to drink it. I'm actually horrified. I've got my water with me, and I can be working, and 2 hours later, I haven't drunk any. And I think, this is ridiculous. And I'm going, I'm thirsty. Damn. So start to set simple routines that are not going to badly affect your life, but are going to actually enhance your life. It's all about making better choices. You know, making choices on the food you have. And no, I'm not an advocate for veganism or vegetarianism. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool omnivore. I like my meat. But again, you don't need to have massive steaks. Have, you know, the right amount of protein that you have. And those things are personal choices, and they're great. I've got fabulous friends that are vegans. And mind you, here's a little interesting thing. And this is just a quirky thing I was discussing with some friends on the weekend. Why is it that if a vegan comes to my place, I will cook a vegan or a vegetarian meal for them. But if I go to a vegan's place, they won't cook me an omnivorous meal. Go figure.
No, that's interesting.
It's a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy.
They probably don't like the look or feel of the meat. I know that when I was vegetarian, I just didn't like to. Yeah.
But you have to honor the people. I'm a Buddhist. I don't force my belief systems on people. I know plenty of amazing Christians and amazing Muslim friends. They do not force what they do. They honor their faith, but they honor my faith as well, because it's about the person. It goes back to everything we've been saying in this session. It's all about the person and communicating appropriately. And the first communication is best with yourself. So the best bit of advice I can give, I know we're slowly starting to run out of time, is in fact, no, this is my best bit of advice, and I think this is probably the gem. Shift your self-talk. Shift your self-talk to you. And every time you start thinking negatively or acting negatively, stop and shift it and reframe it and start thinking in a more positive vein, because it all starts with you. No matter how you cut the cake, it all and always will start with you. So if you're feeling down, depressed, negative and everything else, check your self-talk. Look in the mirror. And it's what I said before. If somebody's going at you, put a mirror up against them and say, you look at that and you'd start judging me after you're perfect with that person. Right?
Absolutely.
So work with yourself too. So get your own personal self-talk working, and you will be absolutely astounded at the results that will start happening in your life.
Yes. Yeah, I love that, Leo. And, you know, I did a meditation just on Sunday, actually. 2 days ago, I was meditating at the gym, and the guy who was running the meditation said, last time you looked in the mirror, what did you say to yourself? Right? And I thought, I kind of thought about it. I thought, well, I looked at my eyes and I thought, gee, there's a few more lines there that weren't there last week. And I thought, gee, that's a really good question. And so after that, and then by the end of the meditation, I started visualizing myself looking in the mirror and saying, you're hot, you're gorgeous, you're amazing, you're, you know, the things that we don't acknowledge ourselves for. And, you know, there is so much to be grateful for. And you know, something I love to do is I love to swim in the ocean. And when I go under a wave, I think about things I'm grateful for. And so by the time I come out of the ocean, which is like being rebirthed every time I go in there, of course, living on the Gold Coast is a great place to do that. It's very easy, and I come out and I just feel amazing. I just, the simple things we can do, whether it's being grateful that you have full health, that you can
Yes.
see, that you can hear, that you have all your senses, that that we don't live in a third world country here in Australia. We have
Yes.
so much to be grateful for, and yet we have such high youth suicide rates here, just like America, the two highest youth suicide rates in the world, and
Oh, and
obviously the self-talk.
and really they've escalated in the last 8 years too because of the economic circumstances. But let's not finish on a downer. I think the thing is that
Yes. No, let's keep it up.
those things are great. And look, there's a lot of things out there in the world that are happening, and there's a lot of things that we all should be grateful for. That's one of the few shoulds I will use, because a lot of us forget to be grateful. But going back to what I was saying before, it takes it one step further back. Is your self-talk is the little things that you never really engage with, like you stub your toe and you'll go, ow, and then you'll say to yourself, you stupid idiot, you do that all the time. Really? And all you're doing is reinforcing that behavior. And it's like anything. I remember, and here's a quick example with children. I saw a parent at this expo I was with. I was selling some wine this weekend for a friend and helping him out. And this lady gave this young child, she must have been probably 4, a glass of wine, or a plastic glass, so it's fine, but a glass of wine. She said, now you make sure you don't spill that. And I stopped her. I sort of said, I looked, because the little girl was looking at me, and I said, you know something, you've got beautiful eyes. Can you do me a favor? Could you just keep that level and everything will be fantastic? Two simple things. Don't you spill that, creates and I can guarantee you she'll spill it.
Yes.
But you say, frame it, say, you keep that even and steady. You don't say anything about spilling. You say, you keep that even and steady, everything will be perfect. That's what they're focusing on then.
Yes.
And it's just
Absolutely.
a very small reframe in the smallest things that help, and particularly when we're talking to children. There's no such thing as a bad behavior. It may be a little bit inappropriate, but it's usually occurring because we as parents have allowed it, really, and never stopped it, but never framed it in a non-negative, more positive way, which is what we should be doing. And we should be doing that for ourselves as well. Even the littlest things that we say, I feel so tired, I should drink more water. Well, no, don't just say it. Say, I'm drinking more water, and go and have a drink. Take action on those simple things, and that will improve your self-talk on an ongoing basis. Start with the little things. Big things will happen. You don't. In fact, this is an interesting thing that I learned. Dale Carnegie, Norman Vincent Peale, Maxwell Maltz. At the heart of everything they say, of the gods of self-development, have written all the best books ever. That all the other books that have been written in the last 50, 60 years are really variations on a theme. One thing that's always been at the heart of what they have said is that if you work on the small things that need to be changed, you never have to worry about the big things, because they will change automatically.
Love that. Yeah,
so
fantastic. I love that,
just
Leo.
on those little things that you can change in your life now, because the rest of it will look after itself.
Yes.
And then you'll have a happy life.
Love that. Yeah, beautiful. And there's a great book. We've been talking about presence a lot in this interview, and The Power of Now, of course. Eckhart Tolle's a fantastic book. And I find when I am in now, I find that any feelings of worry, anxiety, guilt, all that sort of thing just disappears when you're in the presence. And,
absolutely,
like you losing track of time, how you lost track of time, that I can relate to that, because I've done that many times myself, where I've been so involved in a project, or, so engulfed in a conversation, that I completely lose track of time. And, I guess it is getting conscious where you've been unconscious, and really working that muscle to be as present as possible. Now, we do need to wrap up. We can literally talk for hours and days and weeks on end.
You can always have me back.
We've been chatting. Yeah, we could do a part 2. That's true. That's true. So before we wrap up, any final words, Leo, and how can people find you?
I suppose the only final word I'll say is that you're the only person that is responsible for every conversation that you have, whatever that is. So make it a good one. Ask better questions and take ownership. I'm happy to talk to people. If you want to unpack the things that you've learned and want to become a better communicator, I have a website, www.masterclassnetworking.com. There's lots of prompts and things. You can go and join the course, and you're more than welcome to. It is a membership site, but there's a lot of other good information and articles and blog on there. And if people want to get to me, they can actually just look me up on Facebook, just Leo Petrik, Petrik, and get involved in some of the conversations. I've got a couple of business pages up and things that we do and starting to interact, because it's all about the communication. Social media is great, but it's only as great as we choose to make it, rather than it forcing us to change our behavior to disrupt our lives. And that's one of the big things that I'm an advocate for. I think it's what we choose to do and use the tools appropriately, it will become fabulous. Because guess what? It's not going away. In the next 10 years, I mean, Facebook's been around a little over 10 years. In another 10 years, technology and everything else is going to go in so many leaps and bounds. The mind boggles. I don't think I could even, and I've got a pretty good imagination, I don't think I could imagine where we could be in the next 10 years. But they're only tools. The things that drive those things are you and I, the people, and the choices we make. And it's that simple. Make good choices.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much, Leo. And I must say, I'm alive, I'm well, and I feel great.
I haven't heard that for a while.
So that's from the swap meetings. I always love going to swap meetings because they'd always start like that. And, you know, it really is so important to be grateful, be present, to really connect with people. Thank you so much for your time, Leo. And for anyone watching right now, please connect with Leo Petrik on his Facebook, so Petrik, Petrik. And can you give us that website again, please, Leo?
And Masterclass Networking is www.masterclassnetworking.com.
Fantastic. Okay, that's great. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and share it. And we'd love to see your comments on there. I'm also all over the social media on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google+, YouTube, Pinterest, Instagram. Connect with me personally, Aldwyn Altuney. I'm the only one out there with that name. Surprise, surprise. and I'd love to connect with you online. Of course, Media Mastery Show also is on Facebook. So love to connect with you. Love to hear your comments. If you've got any questions for Leo or myself, please put them either at the bottom of this video right now on YouTube or on Facebook. Any final comments, Leo?
No, just if you want to accelerate the successes and the joy and the bliss in your life, slow down and connect with people with great conversations.
Fantastic, just as we've done here today. Thank you so much, Leo.
And it's been a privilege being on the show. Thank you very much, Aldwyn.
Thank you so much. It's been an honour and privilege for me too. I always love chatting with you, and look forward to connecting again very soon. And we might have to do a part 2 and maybe a part 3 on this conversation.
We can, and I'll be more than happy to do that. And off the air, we're due for one of our red wine sessions. We haven't had one for a little while. Yes,
we are absolutely, for at least a bottle or 2 anyways.
Oh, absolutely. I've got some stock.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Leo. Have a fantastic day wherever you are in the world. Go out and be the beautiful shining light that you are, and express yourself fully and connect with all the beautiful other shining lights out there. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll be back again soon with the Media Mastery Show. Thank you, and share the love. Bye.